But I'll tell you, I will fight like I've never fought before, and we're going to continue fighting against President Trump and his radical views.
Come on, don't be so tone deaf.
I think there's a lot of misinformation with the Liberals, and they don't understand what Trump is doing when it comes to the tariffs. Liberals also don't seem to be listening to what the Americans are clearly telling them. Welcome to the channel. If you could, hit that like button, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing.
And we're joined now by United States Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. Ambassador, good to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So the president signed this executive order on Thursday, raises tariff rates on about 70 countries. Should we expect those to be negotiated down in the coming days?
I don't think they will be in the coming days. I think a lot of these, well, I know a lot of these are set rates pursuant to deals. Some of these deals are announced, some are not. Others depend on the level of the trade deficit or surplus we may have with the country. So these tariff rates are pretty much set. I do have my phone blowing up. There are trade ministers who want to talk more and see how they can work in a different way with the United States. But I think that we're seeing truly the contours of the president's tariff plan right now with these rates.
I was reading some interviews you had given, and you said at some point the president's view is maybe a tariff is better than a deal. Are you saying there are countries that they have no shot of avoiding a tariff?
Well, I would say that, in fact, most countries in the world, they just have a tariff assigned to them, right? Whether it's
it'll be the 10% or 15%.
10 or 15 or the higher level tariff. Because again, when the president is looking at this, he looks at potential deals, and we bring him potential concessions from countries and the things they might want to do. And he compares that to the potential tariff that might be applied to try to get that deficit down. And then talking to his advisors, he makes a call on this. And sometimes a country will come back and make additional concessions that make it more appropriate. He's trying to get at the deficit. He's trying to reshore manufacturing. And so those are the factors he's looking at when he's determining whether he's just going to have a tariff or he'll take a deal.
It's not looking good for Canada when it comes to a trade deal, with Canada being one of the only two countries in the world to use retaliatory tariffs and also announcing to recognize statehood for Palestine. A question if it's even possible to get a good deal at this point.
Let me ask you about Canada, which is our second largest trading partner. The president increased tariffs to 35%. It applies, though, to just about 10% of what Canada sells here. Why bother to do this now in the middle of negotiations?
So I would say, first of all, Canada is subject to 50% tariffs on steel, aluminum, 25% tariffs on autos, and again, the 35% tariff on goods that don't follow the rules of USMCA. And early on, the president imposed a 25% tariff on Canada, and that was really about fentanyl and border issues, right? It's a separate regime from the reciprocal tariff. And what did Canada do in response? They talked about helping at the border, and I'm not the drug czar or anything. But what I do know as the trade guy is that Canada retaliated. The only other country in the world who retaliated on tariffs was the Chinese. And so if the president's going to take an action and the Canadians retaliate, the United States needs to maintain the integrity of our action, the effectiveness, so we have to go up to.
You're talking about the things that the former Prime Minister Trudeau put in place, not the current Prime Minister.
And are still in place.
They're still in place, but
Right.
the current Prime Minister has held off largely on retaliation here. That's the guy you're negotiating with and his team. So what's the strategy here? And aren't you worried that this will hurt the broader free trade deal if you truly do want to renegotiate it next year?
Well, the president's view with every country, whether it's Canada or Mexico, and regardless of the kind of trade agreement we have in place, is that the net result of the trading system, whether it's our WTO agreements or our existing trade agreements, the net result has been that a lot of the manufacturing has gone overseas. And when that's the net result, you can't continue with that system. So, I'm not concerned that it's going to complicate things with Canada. Our view is the president is trying to fix the terms of trade with Canada, and if there's a way to a deal, we'll find it. And if it's not, we'll have the tariff levels that we have.
America doesn't seem too worried to strike a deal. If it's not in their best interest, Canada's just going to pay a tariff. It hurts both, but it definitely hurts Canada a whole lot more. And then liberals need to start listening to what the Americans are saying and get on board real quick.
We go now to the Canadian Minister for U.S. Canada Trade, Dominic LeBlanc, who joins us this morning from Moncton, Canada. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ms. Brennan.
You were just here in Washington negotiating, and while the talks are officially continuing, you left town without a deal. and you left town with now what is a 35% tariff on goods. How much of a setback was the president's decision to do that while you are still at the table?
So we were obviously disappointed by that decision. We believe there's a great deal of common ground between the United States and Canada in terms of building two strong economies that work well together. That's been the history of the 40-year free trade agreement that goes back to President Reagan. We were pleased the United States is respecting the terms of the USMCA agreement. That's vital, we think, to the cost of living and affordability, certainly in the United States. It's true in Canada as well. So we're going to continue to do the work. We left always with a better understanding of the American concerns in the trading relationship. Ambassador Greer, Secretary Lutnick engaged with us in constructive, cordial conversation. So we're prepared to stick around and do the work needed. We think, Ms. Brennan, that the economies of both countries are strengthened when we do things together. The trading relationship between Canada and the United States is unlike other partners. One description which I thought was very apt: we don't sell things to each other as much as we build things together.
One thing I find really interesting is how differently they talk to the American news. They seem to completely change their tune. You can feel the desperation in his voice. When the Liberals are talking to Canadians, we get this.
The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, is over.
And that's why it's difficult in this relationship when so much is integrated, but we remain very optimistic.
But you heard Ambassador Greer say because Canada retaliated to the initial tariffs, so all the way back in April when Prime Minister Trudeau was in office, you're paying the price now, even though you have a new government in place. If that's the issue, why not make that concession and pull back?
So Prime Minister Carney, our new Prime Minister, has, we think, built a very business-like, respectful relationship with President Trump. We think that's obviously very important to Canada, and we think to the United States. We're dealing with, take, for example, the steel sector in Canada. It's a strategic importance to national security in Canada, as it is for President Trump and the American economy. We now have a situation where there's a 50% tariff. We're the biggest steel export market for the United States.
Right.
We have a 25% tariff. There's a 50% tariff when we want to sell something into the United States. So effectively, we're blocked from doing that. But the national security interest of Canada requires that we have a viable steel and aluminum sector. And my conversations with Secretary Lutnick and others are that therein lies an example where if we do the right work together, we have, Ms. Brennan, the toughest rules of any country dealing with Chinese dumping into Canada. We have melt and pour tracing so that products coming from other countries with Chinese steel can't be dumped into the Canadian market. So we're looking and advancing ideas where we can do that work with the United States, at the same time ensuring that our economy continues to have sectors vital to the economic future of Canada. But that's not in contradiction to President Trump's national security objectives in the United States, of course.
Mark Carney has built a business-like, respectful relationship with Trump, yet Trump won't even take his phone calls. It's clear Trump doesn't respect Carney, and he shouldn't. Not many people do. He continuously lies to Canadians. He's pushing this DI alphabet agenda, net zero, and mass immigration that is causing problems in America.
Well, are there any plans for the two leaders to speak? I saw President Trump said your prime minister called him Thursday and they just never connected. I mean, are tensions that high? And given the changing justification for the tariffs, do you really feel like you're negotiating with the other side in good faith?
Yeah, sure we do. Of course we do. As I say, the conversations have been informative, constructive, and cordial. I would expect the Prime Minister will have a conversation with the President over the next number of days. That's certainly my plan, again, with Secretary Lutnick, recognizing that we think there is an option of striking a deal that will bring down some of these tariffs, provide greater certainty to investment. We, Ms. Brennan, we passed in Canada our version of the president's One Big Beautiful Bill. It's called the One Canadian Economy Act, which we think will unlock up to $500 billion of investment in Canada for things like pipelines, port infrastructure, mines, all of which offer huge opportunities to American businesses as well. So we think there's a great deal to work on together.
All right, Minister, we'll see if you can get one.
Our version of the One Big Beautiful Bill, from the people that were calling Trump the enemy and saying Pierre Poilievre will bow down to Trump. Look at how now they are the ones basically begging Trump. And that is exactly what Trump wants and why he wanted a liberal government in power. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.